The Diaz brothers are without a doubt the most famous brother pair in the history of MMA. They're known for being tough and loud, and they have won many important fights during their careers. Nick Diaz was the more well-known Diaz brother for a number of years because of his early success in the UFC and his dominating run for the Strikeforce title. This led to his eventual return to the UFC. Nate Diaz, the younger brother, became famous overnight when he agreed to fight Conor McGregor, one of the most famous fighters in the MMA industry. Even though he was a heavy underdog, and many MMA outlets gave the Stockton native almost no chance of beating McGregor, Nate pulled off the biggest upset of the year when he outlasted McGregor on his feet and eventually won with a rear naked choke. He also did an interview after the fight that MMA fans will never forget. Nate Diaz is getting closer and closer to the end of his career. He's had many memorable fights in the UFC, and he will always be remembered as one of the most popular and entertaining fighters in the history of MMA. Let's discuss them all. Number 10. Nate Diaz puts Gray Menard out of the fight in the first round with a TKO. November 13, 2013. After alternating wins and losses at the hands of another tough competitor, Gray Menard, the two fighters finally fought for the third and last time in the season finale of The Ultimate Fighter 18, which put an end to a feud that dated back to 2007. Diaz came out of the situation with an air of supreme self-confidence, even though he knew what was at stake. After avoiding a takedown and getting back to his feet, he started throwing hard 1-2 punches at the Arizona native, which ended the first round with a standing knockout. After losing 2 fights in a row, Diaz was finally ready to put the past behind him and move on to bigger and better things. Number 9. Rory MacDonald wins against Nate Diaz because everyone agreed. April 30th, 2011. When going up against strong wrestlers, the Diaz brothers have never done very well. This happened in 2011, when Diaz was beaten by Canadian Rory MacDonald, whose wrestling was much stronger than Diaz's. The Stockton native, who is very good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wasn't able to come up with a strong offense, and the more powerful wrestler kept him under control for all 3 rounds. Number 8. Nate Diaz defeats Kurt Pellegrino via submission in round 2. April 2nd, 2008. Nate Diaz has won 11 fights by submission in his professional career. However, his comeback victory over Kurt Pellegrino in 2008 is probably more well-known than any of his other victories. After being completely beaten up on the ground for 1.5 rounds, the Gracie black belt finally put a triangle choke on Pellegrino and famously flexed for the camera, knowing that he had Pellegrino trapped and was only seconds away from winning. This comeback win in 2008 took a lot of hard work, and it is one of the performances that show the younger Diaz's fighting spirit the best. Number 7. Benson Henderson beats Nate Diaz by unanimous decision, which was the worst thing that could happen. December 8th, 2012. When he challenged Benson Henderson for the UFC Lightweight Championship, Diaz finally got his chance to win UFC Gold. Diaz finally got a shot at the UFC Gold after years of fighting. During the 5 rounds, he showed a lot of toughness, but in the end, he was beaten badly by Henderson, who outgrappled and outstruck the challenger the whole time. The battle was won by Henderson. Even though Diaz wasn't tough enough to beat the champion's perfect skill, he didn't let that stop him. Instead, he focused on getting back on top. Number 6. Nate Diaz wins Jim Miller after Miller's submission in round 2, May 5th, 2012. Both fighters had to win for a chance to fight Benson Henderson for the UFC lightweight title. The person that won this fight would do it. In the second round, Diaz's wrestling skills came into play again when he was able to stop Miller's offensive wrestling and put a guillotine choke on him. After this win, he went on to win 3 more matches in a row, which made it possible for him to play Henderson a few months later. Number 5. Jorge Masvidal beats Nate Diaz because the doctor stopped the fight in the 3rd round. November 2nd, 2019. After being outboxed for 3 rounds in a row by Masvidal, the sharper and cleaner fighter, a lot of people would like to think that Diaz was on his way for another amazing comeback win. At the end of the 3rd round, the fight had to be stopped because Diaz had a huge cut around his eye. This meant that the people watching couldn't tell if Nate could make a comeback and win the fight. Masvidal did a great job as he attacked his opponent over and over. hitting him with clean, strong blows until the doctor decided enough was enough and stopped the fight. Number 4. Nate Diaz's win over Donald Cerrone by a unanimous decision was the best. December 30th, 2011. It was a good guess that Donald Cerrone's expert kickboxing would make it hard for Diaz to stay on his feet during the fight. Even so, Diaz was able to surprise everyone by putting on a striking clinic and winning the fight by decision thanks to his accurate strikes. People are likely to remember most of the moment when Diaz famously flipped off Cerrone at the start of round 3, knowing he had his opponent right where he wanted him, and then continued to hit him until the end of round 3. Number 3. Josh Thompson beats Nate Diaz in the second round with a mix of head kicks and punches. April 20th, 2013. It was the first time in Diaz's career that a fight ended with him being knocked out. Diaz didn't look too bad in his lightweight fight against Josh Thompson, but it was the first time in his career that he was knocked out. Most of the fight consisted of Diaz chasing Thompson around the cage. However, the fight was won by California-born Thompson, who hit Diaz with a barrage of head kicks that Diaz couldn't block. Number 2. Nate Diaz puts Conor McGregor to sleep in the second round of their fight. March 5, 2016. Nate Diaz's win over Conor McGregor, which was a comeback or upset, is by far the one that brought him the most attention. This win made him a superstar and set the stage for a rematch that broke pay-per-view records at the time. After getting beat up on his feet for most of the first round, Diaz came out in the second round throwing calm and methodical 1-2 combinations that eventually slowed McGregor down. After Diaz's combos hurt him, the Irishman got desperate and tried to take Diaz down, but Diaz, who was a better grappler, quickly reversed the takedown and the fight went on standing. Diaz jumped on McGregor's exposed neck right away and put him in a rear naked choke that was easy and just right. After the battle, there was an interview that would become so popular that it would crash the internet. Number 1. Rafael dos Anjos beats Nate Diaz by unanimous decision, which is the worst thing that could happen. December 13th, 2014. Before their fight in 2014, Rafael dos Anjos gave Nick Diaz his worst and least prepared performance ever, and Nick Diaz had never looked so bad or unprepared before. The Brazilian fighter was in complete control throughout the whole fight. He won by unanimous decision even though Diaz's face was covered in blood, thanks to his powerful leg kicks, superior grappling skills, and overwhelming strength. This was the one and only time that the notorious Diaz brother looked like he didn't belong and the other participants were much better than him. Thanks for watching this video. Please make sure to hit like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't done already.